at the airport. We're at Adelaide Airport and we're about to go on a 5,500 kilometre passport run. Join us, we'll do it together. A quick coffee in the lounge before we jump on an early morning flight to Perth in Western Australia. We're on a quest. We need to get Jamie's Dutch passport renewed. If we don't renew it in time and it expires, he loses his Dutch nationality and Dutch passport forever. So it's important we get this done, and with most of our state borders closed, Perth is the only option. So that's the quest of today. We're hoping that this will run pretty smooth, but when you fly into WA, there's always an element of risk involved.
The anxiety about flying into Western Australia was real. Throughout this COVID period, they have had amongst the world's strictest border policies and would think nothing of shutting the borders immediately if there was 1 or 2 cases interstate, which sometimes meant that even those people who were flying and in transit on their way to Western Australia, when they arrived, they were then told they'd have to quarantine for 14 days or told to go straight back to where they came from. So until we got through the border checkpoint and were into Western Australia, I wasn't going to relax. Dutch passports can only be renewed in person, and the only places you can do that in Australia is at the consulate in Sydney or the VSF Global Office in Perth. With Sydney still in lockdown and state borders closed, Perth was the only option. Not that getting into Perth was easy. Western Australia assumes that everybody is riddled with disease, so they make you jump through multiple hoops before they grant you permission to enter their enclave. Even though South Australia has been designated as low risk by the dear leader of Western Australia, we had to apply for an entry permit the same as everybody else. This included uploading copies of our photo ID and proof of vaccination. We also had to provide an address where we would be staying and a suitable address where we could quarantine for 14 days if so required. As this would be a day trip, we had neither. Unfortunately, the system requires you to actually enter a proper address, so I did the only sensible thing and I entered the address of dear leader himself, the Premier. It worked, and approval arrived shortly afterwards.
All that said, very excited to be back in the sky. It feels absolutely incredible. It's been a while and I can't wait to be flying internationally again, hopefully very soon.
The flight to Perth is around 3 hours. The first part of the flight was quite cloudy, but I managed to get a couple of glimpses of the Eyre Peninsula coastline. This part of the world is beautiful, and I highly recommend watching my recent Road Trip to Nowhere video, which features this coast and the incredible desolate Nullarbor Plain. Qantas Domestic provides a good solid product. The crew were friendly and breakfast was served. I went with the cold option of mango yogurt and a muffin. All Qantas 737s have Wi-Fi, and recharging your devices is easy. This particular aircraft has seatback entertainment as well as streaming on your own device. I spent most of the flight reading a book my father had just written about his life with the help of my niece Bailey. It's a really great way to record family memories and stories. This flight was about 2/3 full. I specially chose a seat near the back so that I'd have a row to myself and could spread out. The legroom, even back here, was pretty good for economy. The return flight to Adelaide is on a Jetstar A320, so you'll see how that compares later on in the video. Much of this flight is out over the Great Australian Bight, but eventually we made landfall over Cape Arid National Park, which looked pretty stunning. A little bit later, we passed over Esperance.
That was a lovely, lovely flight. Thank you very much. Great flight. See you guys. Isn't it nice to be back in the air? Thanks. Thanks. See ya. We were questioned by the police. We were sanitised and we were temperature checked. Yep. But they let us in. So let's go and discover the Republic of Western Australia. I wonder what currency they use here. It's always nice coming to a new country and learning about different cultures and this sort of stuff. Let's go and explore.
The best way to learn a new culture and to find out a little bit more about a new country or city you're in is to catch public transport. So that's what we're doing. We're taking the bus into the city. That said, we haven't met any locals yet, other than the bus driver, and he was very friendly. The Western Australian economy is pretty much entirely based on digging stuff up. The skyline reflects this. While some old buildings remain, many are just a facade. It's just like being in old London, isn't it? Ironically, Qantas have just announced that the non-stop flights between Perth and London are no longer going from Perth because of the border restrictions here. So this is about as close as West Australians can get to the UK at the moment, which is quite frankly all a bit sad. Honestly, who says that you can't have fun in Perth? You've got some giant rings over there, an island, a bridge that looks like a pair of boobies, there's a water park over there, and here there's a carousel to enjoy. Honestly, this is the best place ever. Just as our excitement was reaching fever pitch, it was time to get business done and head to our passport appointment. Yep. And we're done. Passport renewed. Now we can go and see some more of Perth.
I'm hungry.
You hungry? Let's head to the beach.
I have blues from a crab and prawn linguine at the Shore House, Swanbourne.
Yum.
Delish.
It's interview time. We're going to talk to a local. I have got my very good friend Stacey with us here. We've just had a lovely lunch, and I was going to ask the question, Stacey. The perception in the free colonies is that everybody here in WA has got Stockholm syndrome and wants the borders to stay closed forever. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely open the borders. No closing borders for me.
No, you don't have Stockholm syndrome?
Absolutely not.
No?
I don't know anyone who has except McGowan. Or maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, no. Tell us what you really think.
That's what I really think. Open the borders.
So you've heard it here. Not everybody in WA has Stockholm syndrome, and a lot of the locals do want the borders open. So let's get those vaccination rates up, and when the time is right, let's open borders as quickly as possible and reunite families.
Heard it first on Bunnick News.
After lunch, Stacey gave us a bit of a tour of her hometown, and we ended up at the beautiful Kings Park overlooking the city. Some people say Perth is at its most beautiful from a distance. Now, if you're one of those people, I suggest you come up here. Standing at Kings Park at the War Memorial, and the view from here of the city and the Swan River is absolutely stunning. And while you're in Perth, one place you do have to visit is the Margaret River Chocolate Company, which is on the main Mall Street area. What's this? Murray Street. Murray Street, in the centre of Perth. Come and visit the Margaret River Chocolate Company. It's a really good tasty stuff. After the chocolate store, it was time to head back to the airport to start our journey home. My Qantas Platinum status meant we could enjoy a bit of pre-flight Qantas lounge indulgence. So we've popped into the Qantas lounge for a pre-flight bite and bumped into Ryan So here, who is a fellow aviation YouTuber. Ryan So Fly. I'll link it down in the comments below. Check out his channel as well. We both happen to be on the same flight to Adelaide.
Not really supposed to take off my mask, but hi.
It's time to fly. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's go home. Our flight home was on a Jetstar A320-200. The seats were clean and comfortable, but sadly there was no USB charging, no in-flight Wi-Fi and no included catering with Jetstar. Also, unlike this morning's flight, this flight was chock-a-block full. I still managed to get some work done on this video though, so the flight was time well spent. Sadly, not so good, is the fact that I deleted all of the footage for the rest of the flight before I'd managed to download it. So here's some more views of the flight over to Perth. 3 weeks after our dash to Perth, we got notification that the Dutch passport was on its way, so it was a day trip well worth it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. If you haven't done so, please check out my channel where there's a whole lot of other travel reviews and flight reviews and a lot more on the way. If you haven't done so, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. In the meantime, as always, happy travels.